Ya estamos listos.
Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome. My name is Sergio Sánchez, Senior Policy Director for Global Clean Air at Healthy Communities at Environmental Defense Fund. It's a pleasure to host today's event. Today we are launching the Reset Network, a new international research and engagement platform focused on advancing just energy transitions in the Global South. This session marks the regional launch for the Americas, and it will be followed by two additional launches for Africa and Asia. Our aim today is to highlight the leadership already emerging across the Global South in shaping just energy transitions, reflect on some of the challenges ahead, and explore how the Reset Network can help strengthen collaboration, knowledge exchange, and practical solutions moving forward. Before we begin, just a couple of quick housekeeping notes. This event is being recorded, and the recording will be made available on the Reset Network website. During the panel discussion, please feel free to send your questions through the Zoom Q&A function. We'll do our best to get to as many as possible. To get us started, we'll watch a short video highlighting one of the network's early success stories, and the international dialogue on just labor markets transitions that ultimately led to a major publication in Nature Communications. Let's take a look.
The Reset Network works on energy system transformations because we know that decarbonization is not just a technical challenge. It is a social and an economic one where the Global South can lead the world. I am Luis Ferrer. I grew up in Mexico City, in a country where millions of people work in the informal economy, street vendors, small-scale farmers, domestic workers. When I started studying how climate policy affects labor markets, I kept running into the same problem. Most of the frameworks were designed for countries with formal employment, strong unions, and social safety nets. They didn't fit places like Mexico, or Nigeria, or India. We have seen across the world that climate policies can falter when distributional impacts are ignored. Rising energy prices, job insecurity, and regional decline can quickly erode public and political support. Just transition measures are not optional. They are the policy enablers essential for making decarbonization politically and socially durable. One of our first major projects asked a simple question: what happened to workers when an energy system changed? My colleagues and I conducted a comparative analysis across 14 countries in the global north and south, combining economic modeling with qualitative expert input. What we found is that challenges in developing countries are fundamentally different. When half your workforce is informal, you can rely on unemployment insurance or retraining programs that assume people have formal contracts. When there's no social safety net, a mine closure doesn't just mean a career change, it can mean a family crisis. We produce a progress scale that benchmarks where countries stand on labor-focused just transition, a tool we hope other nations can use to identify their own gaps and priorities. From there, we convene an international dialogue, interviewing over 30 experts and bringing together trade unionists, labor economists, energy company veterans, and policymakers across 4 sessions. That process identified 5 key challenges, from the mismatch between where jobs disappear and where green jobs emerge, to the risk that informal workers get left out entirely, to that enormous financing gap. The results were published in Nature Communications and have been accessed over 12,000 times, which tells me it hit a nerve. But just transition goes beyond labor. It includes access to affordable energy, fair prices, strong institutions, and inclusion, especially for groups historically left out like women and informal workers. Markets matter, but they must be designed to account for equity and not just efficiency. What I have learned from this work is that Global South doesn't need adapted versions of rich country solutions. It needs its own solutions. designed by local researchers who understand the institutional capacity, the labor informality, the development priorities of their own countries. That's what the Reset Network is building, a space where those researchers connect, share tools and data, and produce the kind of evidence that can unlock climate finance, shape regulation, and give governments the confidence to move forward. Because a transition that leaves people behind isn't just not fair, it's a transition that won't last.
So the dialogue this video talks about is about bringing together labor leaders, academics, policymakers, and practitioners from both the Global South and North to address a critical but underexplored dimension of energy transitions, the impact on workers and labor markets. We will go back to this as soon as possible. Now, please let me tell you about the Reset Network and how we believe this work matters. Could you please give me the second slide? The numbers on your screen tell the story. Around 3/4 of cost-effective climate mitigation must come from the Global South, yet only about 20% of global clean energy investments flows there, and 2/3 of the world's population lives in these countries, often in energy poverty. Those last two figures exclude China. This isn't just a climate risk, it's a massive untapped opportunity. Could you give me next? Why isn't the investment flowing? So why isn't the investment flowing? We hear the same four challenges consistently from researchers and decision makers. Many countries lack locally tailored, transparent evidence that investors and policymakers need. The tools being used are often closed source, meaning countries can't own or adapt their own planning. Technical models and economical analysis and social impacts tend to be siloed, advancing in parallel rather than working together. And too often, international initiatives come in, publish, and leave without building lasting local capacity. Could you please give me next? What is the Reset Network? The Reset Network was created to fill these gaps. Reset stands for Reimagining South-led Energy Transition. It's an international non-profit research and engagement network bringing together researchers and decision makers across the Global South to accelerate just energy transitions. It is coordinated by Environmental Defense Fund and evolved from the MSET network, an energy modeling initiative established in 2022 that continues as a core pillar. Importantly, Reset does not lobby for specific pathways. It provides impartial, evidence-based analysis to help inform decision-making. Three integrated pillars. The network operates across three integrated pillars. First, economic-based policy solutions, research and dialogue on emission pricing, climate energy, just labor transitions, and the broader economic dimensions of energy transition. Second, modeling for energy transition, open source energy planning models adapted to national realities, giving countries ownership of their own planning. Third, policy evaluation, assessing how existing policies are working with a focus on emission pricing systems. What makes this distinctive is that these three pillars talk to each other. A country can go from model to economic assessment to policy recommendation with local researchers leading the work through. How we work? How does research work in practice? Through South-South knowledge exchange, like when our Chile-based team helped the Dominican Republic build its own energy planning capacity. Through open source tools that countries can own and adapt, through capacity building workshops, small grants, mentorship, and expert sessions, and through facilitated dialogue that brings cross-sector stakeholders together. The shared commitments you see on this slide from our strategy, they reflect that our members have told us matters, accelerating just transitions, building local capacity, encouraging collaboration, enabling informed decision-making, engaging diverse views, and upholding the integrity of network activities. Building on these shared commitments, I'd like to introduce our first video to talk about this policy dialogue.
The Reset Network works on energy system transformation because we know that governments are under pressure to deliver a rapid, cost-effective energy transition. Our work in the Global South brings together credible models, transparent data, and most importantly, people with experience who know how to connect technical analysis to real policy choices. I am Rodrigo Borges. I grew up in Santiago, Chile, and I am now an environmental economist and part of the Reset Network management. Over the few decades, Chilean economists and modelers have designed and implemented green taxes, built nationally calibrated electricity models, worked across government, university, and civil society, and translated complex modeling into actionable policy. Chile was a mirror that showed we could model whatever question people had and provide all the information needed to diagnose a solution. Experienced Chilean modelers work alongside the Dominican Republic Ministry of Energy and Mines and connected in local academics and technical teams. Together, we built a national electricity model, specifically for the Dominican Republic, that was calibrated against real historical data.
So the country was getting a lot of investment opportunity, but we simply did not have the tools or the software or the in-house capacity to make evidence-based policy decisions and know from all these opportunities which one is the best one in the long term. This kind of gap really was, I would say, a restriction for us. The team really helped bridge this gap by aligning our institutional needs with practical open source modeling solutions that were transparent, peer reviewable, and accessible. And honestly, we did not have the budget to go and hire consultants to analyze each one of these potential solutions.
The model we built was open, the assumptions were transparent, and we discussed the result weekly. The goal was to eventually make any external expert unnecessary. It was all about building trust.
But I think the best thing is that they helped us create like a knowledge community where there was a lot of transfer of this information. So it was not a one-time thing.
As experienced economists and modelers, we know that just transition policy must be tailored by different jurisdictions. Institutional capacity, electricity system models, and technical capability are different everywhere. Collaboration across the Global South can bridge gaps, reduce risk, improve policy credibility, and unlock international finance more quickly. The Reset Network's aims is to move beyond high-level principles and support real-world decision-making. We are building models and tools informed by experience and tailored to local situations. Our open source models are not an impenetrable black box. They are designed to build capacity and help governments connect knowledge to decisions. The experience we have had of Chile MCET team working with Dominican Republic means we know this type of collaboration can work and will boost a just energy transition across the Global South.
Well, thanks for watching, and we will include both videos as part of the recording materials. That story from the Dominican Republic shows what's possible when local capacity, international cooperation, and good evidence come together. To help us explore these things further, I am pleased to hand it over to María Teresa Ruiz-Tagle, Executive Director of CLG Chile, the Corporate Leaders Group for Climate Action, who will be moderating the next panel. María Teresa brings extensive experience working at the intersection of business leadership and climate action, and she will guide us through today's conversation. María Teresa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sergio, and thank you, Reset, for this webinar, an important occasion to meet and to talk and to promote this Global South collaboration. So let me introduce the panelist of our next session, which is Matías Negrete, is General Director and Founder of Vinken and Professor and Department Chair at Pontificia Universidad Católica de Chile. Alfonso Blanco is Director of the Energy Transition Climate Program at the Inter-American Dialogue and former Executive Director of OLADE. And Jimy Ferrer is an Economic Affairs Officer at the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, ECLAC. So thank you, all of you, for being here today and for participating in this webinar. And let me ask to the audience that you can send questions through the Q&A that is in the Zoom. So please feel free to put your question and we will try to include them towards the end of the panel. So first, I would like to start with a general question to all of you, the same question, and it's the following. Well, from your experience working on just energy transition in the Global South, you're all involved with this. What is one success story that you can share? And what is one challenge that you're facing? And I would like to start with Matías, please. And the last remark, we have 3 to 4 minutes per answer to each of you. So if we can be careful with the time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, María Teresa, and thank you for the invitation. And also thank you to the Reset Network for this event. Yes, I think it's an interesting question regarding some example of success or challenges. And I would like just to mention as a success was our work. It just show up in the video, like it was hard to follow, but in the video it show up the history of the project. We were collaborating with the Energy and Mines Ministry in Dominican Republic, in which from the technical side, from Vinken and the Católica University, we work together with the professional of Dominican Republic to develop a power system planning model, which is one of the tools that is really important to inform policy decisions regarding the expansion or regarding the technologies, regarding new policies that you can use. And the important is not you are providing like a software, you are constructing capabilities. Yes, you are not just providing the fish, you are teaching how to fishing. Yeah. So I think that's really important, and the measure of success is like we were able to create capabilities, and the institution can still use the model years later. Okay, so and that has a lot of benefits, and we can go about that in our question, but it does provide an independence to each country, and also the use of open models also has some important features. Okay. So with these tools, yes, you create abilities. You are not just providing an answer to a particular question. And regarding challenges, I am from Chile, and in Chile we have a success story on integrating new energy and new technologies in our electric system. But also that creates challenges because sometimes the technological adoptions is faster than the changes in the regulation architecture. Okay, even though Chile was a pioneer in the introduction of markets, for example, in electricity, our architecture still is not completely aligned with the technological reality. Okay, and that creates challenges in, for example, the price formation. How do you operate the system? How do you coordinate the system? So it's important that the main challenges, like I think we can face, is like there is a need to align the technological with the regulation, and that requires coordination among several institutions, because the energy transition is not only technological. Okay, it's also how do we adapt institution to much more complex technological system. And one key aspect, for example, is to provide this institution with analytical capabilities. I think that's
That's a great point. Thank you, Matías. I think the challenge that you mentioned about technological and being aligned with the regulation is something that definitely can be a challenge in different countries. What about you, Alfonso, with your background in OLADE, okay, that goes beyond just Chile and what Matías was talking about, Dominican Republic? Which other case would you like to highlight, and which were the challenges in those?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Maria Teresa. It's a real pleasure, and thank you for to Reset for the invitation. Well, I had the privilege to head OLADE for 6 years, and well, all the reality of the Latin American region regarding energy transitions is very asymmetrical in the region. No, there's a complete different development of the energy transitions considering countries. In that sense, I wanted to highlight that here in Uruguay, I am also co-founder of Fundación IBI, and Fundación IBI has the challenge to show how Uruguay developed the energy transitions in the country, and how our model had the possibility to transform the country, and that is one of the I believe one of the most important cases of energy transitions in the region. In 2005, Uruguay had 50% of renewability in the power generation, with lack of access to natural gas from Argentina in the middle of a crisis of the electrical system. And in less than 10 years, the country developed a power system of more of 98% of renewability. And that is a success story of how the energy transitions are possible, how the energy transitions are beneficial for the development of a country that is 100% fossil fuels importer, and that is the case of Uruguay is a very interesting example of how to use open tools in the planning. That is part of Reset goals and objectives. How to use and work with the academia and the research to develop the power system in the country. How to create ecosystem for business and investment in the country to increase the power generation from renewable energies in the country. And Uruguay developed during 15 years that strategy with incredible success. And we are trying to use this model in other countries. For example, in Colombia, we are supporting the government in the modeling of the power system to demonstrate that the electrical system of Colombia has the possibility to operate with high penetration of renewability. And that is an important issue to highlight, because the fossil fuels narrative is based on the lack of operation of high penetration of renewable energies in the system, and the necessity of backup energy from fossil fuels. And in Uruguay, we demonstrated that the system can operate with 100% of renewability, using the hydro as a energy storage of the system, and with the cooperation of the different wind, solar, and biomass, and hydro as a very a strong and flexible power system, and that kind of experiences has the possibility to be implemented in other countries in the region, and the share of experiences and the share of tools that is
very important.
Completely.
Thank you very much, Alfonso. I'm from Chile, and I thought that Chile was like the best example, but definitely Uruguay has made an amazing, race into the renewable energy. Jimy, what else can you say? I mean, it seems like the region is doing quite well. So you, from ECLAC, I'm sure you have other examples and other vision with respect to the positive cases to highlight, and also other type of challenges that you may have found.
Thank you, Maria Teresa, for the question. And first of all, I would like to thank you for inviting ECLAC to take part in the launch of the Reset Network. We welcome and commend this type of initiative, which can help to the region to move toward more sustainable development pathway. ECLAC has pointed out that the Latin American and the Caribbean region faces several challenges, including low capacity for growth, high inequality, low institutional capabilities, and environmental unsustainability. This combination of the challenges erodes the population trust in institutions and places discussion on how they achieve just, responsible, and sustainable transition at the center of the agenda. In this context, ECLAC has identified key sectors and areas of opportunity that can drive a major productive transformation and foster green and inclusive growth, in which the energy transition plays an important role. In this sense, Latin America and the Caribbean region, some very interesting energy transition processes can be documented, such as the case of Chile. Indeed, in our development draft report, we highlight the Chile's leadership in renewable energies as a case where technical capabilities were matched with political capabilities. Another significant achievement in Chile's energy transition and decarbonization efforts has been to accompany policy instruments such as its NDCs, long-term strategies, and mitigation policies with regulatory framework, such as the climate change laws, as well as incentives and disincentives, and economic and financial instruments. In this later area, I would like to highlight how Chile has been able to articulate the implementation of different carbon pricing instruments and carbon markets. Chile not only has a carbon tax applied to energy sector, it also has an emission compensation system offsets that is fostering a domestic carbon market and encouraging investment in sustainable projects. Furthermore, the rules and procedures for implementing Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, enabling the private sector to participate in the climate action and contribute to financing investments in key sectors, such as renewable energy. Overall, Chile has successfully integrated all these elements into a roadmap for carbon pricing instruments. Now, the main challenge we face is that a just transition is governance and finance intensive, and our region operates under limited fiscal spaces. And then I think the more difficult situation for our countries is how to manage the just energy transition in the case of limited fiscal space.
Thank you very much, Jimy, and to all of you for the first question. Something that I miss, and I leave it to you not to answer straight away, but perhaps to touch it a bit later, is all of these countries that you are saying have a huge penetration of renewable. But one of the problems that we face in the region is like the electrification is not that high. Okay, so that we need to magnify, to increase the sectors, the economic sectors that are electrified. So that's something that we can try to work in our conversation. But let me go to the second question. How can greater engagement between researchers and decision makers help? Yeah, we need all of you have been mentioning, the researcher and the policymakers, but we need to put them together, to talk together as not just copy paste a model, but try to connect directly. So what can be an insights that you can offer from your experience with respect to your work? You mentioned some of that before, Matías, of the work that you were doing with Dominican Republic. What else can you say about this relationship between the researcher and the policymakers?
Yes, I think first of all, given all the features we are talking now, the energy systems and the electricity system in particular are increasing their complexity. Okay, so that requires the use of new tools, of new way to, for example, planning system, operating system, and stuff like that. Yes. And in one side, you have the academia, which sometimes is way beyond what you can really implement. And the academia, if the results is just in a paper, sometimes it's really hard to produce changes in the short term, And I am also an academic, so this was a transition, a road like I faced myself. Like, you need to understand, like, one is what you can write in a paper, but sometimes the more important constraints are social constraints, are capabilities constraints, and in order to apply this technical knowledge into real decisions, you need to co-work with public policy, with people from the government, people from the regulator, people from the court, ISO. So it's important to the co-production of knowledge rather than just the transfer of knowledge, because sometimes it happens like the academia wants to transfer a technology, and then what happened? The industry doesn't buy it, or the government doesn't use it, and it's not because they don't want. It's because sometimes there are some, for example, in the case of Chile, sometimes we have some regulation issues, like you cannot really use a more sophisticated tools because the regulation does not allow it yet. That's why and in Dominican Republic is an example of that. We did not present a finished tool. We build scenarios together. We discuss for several months. We train also the people over there. So that's an important insight. I think it's not just transfer knowledge, but it's to co-create knowledge. And why this it can be or it cannot be a success is like you need to engage the local technical teams. There is no way you cannot go with, as you mentioned, you cannot import solution, because in addition, the energy sector, the electricity sectors sometimes each country can have a lot of similarities, but also special issues. And if you don't know that special issues, so I think this is important. Like you need to, and that's the key point of this type of network, like RESET or MSET, like allows to academia and researchers to engage with the people like is making the decision, and both sides can create this relationship to really apply the results, and at the end of the day, the real indicator of success, and this is the last message, is like they use the model. It's not just a model like you buy and you really use it for several years.
Yeah, let me ask you a bit more about that, because the question is about obviously the researchers and the policymakers, but obviously we have the private sector that in the end is the one that is going to use the system. Okay, so my question or a sub-question is, did you involve the private sector in Dominican Republic as well to talk about this? Because in the end, they also need to understand, and they also need to play the game. And one of the problems that we have had in Chile sometimes is like the private sector is unable, to fully participate because of this lack of understanding.
Yes. In Dominican Republic, we engage with also the private sector, and I think that's key. It's not just regulators; it's different stakeholders. Because
that's a good point.
As you mentioned, the energy system is a key part of the society, and the society is regulator, is academia, is the private sector. At the end of the day, the investment are made by the private sector in many of our countries, you know. So it's again, in the same way, like you need to put the information of the regulators and policy makers into your technical models, you also need to understand the constraints that the private can bring into the model to create like public a policy like you can really implement. Because if not, to be a paper, it's going to be another roadmap with zero impact.
Yeah. What about Alfonso, about the same question, and perhaps again using the example of Uruguay? How was the process, you know, in between the researchers, policymakers, and perhaps, as Matías mentioned, these other, you know, stakeholders, which is private sector, but also the civil society, you know, NGOs, for instance. I mean, how was the situation?
I want to tell you a very brief story about it. The country now in Uruguay has around 30% of the electricity production from wind energy, no? And how the Uruguay achieved that high amount of penetration of wind energy in the system. Probably, I believe that now Uruguay is in the second place regarding the penetration of wind energy in the power generation in the world. How we achieved that? Well, we started in 2006, 2007 with a mesh of towers to measure the wind potential in the country. And how we did that? With the academy. The academy installed all around the country the towers for the wind measurement in the country. After that, no, that information was provided to the policymaker, no, and with the data open data to the private sector in the future bidding process of the country. We provided very high quality information and data, no, for the development of the wind industry in the country. And that is an example of how to work in the creation of capabilities, and how the research, the academia, and the private sector have to collaborate with the same purpose and objective. And that is an example of the development of the wind generation in the country. A similar situation and a similar procedure we use for the development of solar in the country, and a similar procedure with the biomass power generation in the country. If, for example, for the biomass power generation, a complete study of the potential of biomass in the country was developed in order to obtain very high quality information about the availability of biomass in the country for power generation, and that information was provided to the private sector for the development of investments in the power sector. And I am convinced that this is the secret of of how to work in a collaborative manner.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Alfonso. Super clear case study. Jimy, what about the same question, of course, but I would like to see if you can add something with the labor market, okay? Because we've been talking about the links between the researcher and the policymaker in terms of the technological aspect. But there is a huge impact in terms of the labor market. I mean, there is labor that was using a certain technology. Now we have a transition. Labor have to transit. Communities have to transit. So can you go through that side, please?
Thank you, María Teresa. Let me say several countries in the LAC region, including Colombia, Chile, Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, as Alfonso mentioned, and Dominican Republic and Mexico, have made progress in integrating a just transition into their climate action plans. Although this approach is still emerging, these countries are seeking to shift their energy mix toward renewable while ensuring social equity and the protection of rights. It is a priority that this process be carried out first within the framework of social dialogue that involves the three key actors: government, employers, and workers, with the aim of negotiating socioeconomic policies, building consensus on labor and social issues, and promoting stability, social justice, and participation of the society. Second, it's important to be aware that there are fiscal risks associated with the transition, linked to the loss of tax revenues as demand for fossil fuel declines. Therefore, planned and gradual processes are needed to allow countries to identify the sector that will replace economic activities that there are currently highly carbon intensive. First, this is important to consider the green fiscal policy itself, through the green taxes, among others, can help mobilize resources to finance a just transition. In ECLAC, we also see promising the next frontier success in green hydrogen. Our report notes that the pace of green hydrogen development in the region has accelerated, led by countries including Chile and Colombia, for example, which have advanced roadmaps and strategies. This is relevant for a just transition because it can connect renewable resources to industrial diversification and better jobs. A special dimension of the challenge is managing macroeconomic exposure to the transition, especially for countries with fossil fuel dependent or transition sensitive export structure. It is important to note that for some countries, significant portion of their tax revenues come from fossil fuel taxes, such as Ecuador, Colombia, and Costa Rica. In general, this is why ECLAC stresses the need to build technical, operational, political, and prospective capabilities so government can design effective policies, implement and evaluate them, create social legitimacy through the dialogue, and keep continuity beyond political cycles.
Absolutely true. Despite we may not like, the fossil fuels, if there is a tax and they generate revenues, okay, obviously if we reduce that, there are less revenues. And I don't know if you want to touch the following question, but what about the environmental liabilities? We haven't mentioned those as well, okay? And at least in Chile, for instance, there is a lot of friction with the transition because many communities will say, well, we were suffering the environmental liabilities before, now you want to transit, and who says that we are going to pay the cost again, and the benefits are going to be taken by the private sector and abroad. Okay, so that's another important issue in the just transition that we need to consider. I don't know if you want to say something with that, Jimy.
Yes, briefly, I think that we need, in a just transition, we need to integrate the three dimensions: economic, social, and environmental. And all of three dimensions, we need to integrate the social participation in all the discussion. What is the cost? What is the benefit? What is the specific sector that we could be lost in this or reformulation of the economic structure? And then we need to prepare an effective social dialogue in the just transition process is necessary in all countries implemented this kind of strategies.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jimy. Rodrigo, Luis, I would like to ask if there are any questions from the public. Sorry, Matías, you want to reply to this first. The floor is yours, Matías. Please.
Yes, not reply. I just want to try to answer a question like you mentioned before, which I think is really important and is key. I think you mentioned like we talk a lot about electricity, but for example, in Chile, electrification is around 22,
20%, 22, yes.
Of the energy. And the question is how do we change that? And I think at least there are two dimensions like are critical. I think there is first one dimension like is critical to electrify and has to do with prices. You know, if the prices
and security.
Another one is obviously security. Yes, and are both are key. But if we cannot achieve like a secure and reliable electricity system in reasonable prices, there is no way like we are going to do a more electrification. You know, even if we want to do that.
Absolutely.
You know, so I think it's really important. Like, yes, we can do all the studies, all the roadmaps, all the whatever we want to do, all the papers. But if we don't tackle that point, there is not going to be a transition. You know, so that's important. Like government and policymakers has these two elements as central. Because, for example, in Chile, we still use firewood for heating in the south of Chile a lot. And it's not because people like to burn things, it's because it's way cheaper than electricity.
Absolutely.
So I think it's important also to keep in mind like the price and obviously the security of the electricity.
The provision.
The provision, I think, is key if we want to increase that percentage of electricity use.
Definitely. Good points that you mentioned, the case of Chile, that also you link it to the air pollution problem. So this is like a multidimensional problem because we want to electrify not only due to climate change, but also because of the local pollution problems, but it has to be the social, economic and environmental dimension. And of course, it has to be affordable. You have to be able to secure the provision of the service. Alfonso.
Yeah, and electrification has an additional challenge that is the networks.
Networks
have to be updated, modern, and have to have the quality of service to the new kind of electricity production and consumption.
Absolutely true. Something that, again, we are struggling in Chile with the construction and the building of that infrastructure. I know that we have been receiving some questions in the Q&A. Rodrigo, Luis, I don't know if you want to call them. Otherwise, I have some other questions.
We have one really interesting question from Derek Tepe.
Okay.
In the rural context, do we see energy creation and ownership as a major player in renewables rollout? Thinking in particular about community solar, hydro, etc., is that more disaggregated system prioritizing local ownership attractive for investment? I mean, it is in the chat box if anyone wants to reread it, but yeah. So I think it would be really useful if any of you feel good to answer it.
Anyone would like to address it? Alfonso, go ahead.
And now we are working in Haiti, for example, trying to develop an electrification plan for the access in Haiti, and that is a real problem. That my answer to this question is that the isolated system and the electrification of rural areas are not part of our business model. It's very difficult to obtain a sustainable business model for this kind of solutions. The case of Haiti is possible an extreme case because it's very difficult. All the value chain of the electricity production in isolated areas, a lot of specific problems. But in other cases of the region, the electrification and universal access for isolated areas and rural areas should be part of electrification and access policy supported by the government, supported by the development banks, and with the idea that that kind of service should be part of financially supported for the entire system for most of the cases. Probably that there are some specific cases that you can generate a sustainable business model, but it's very, very difficult to achieve that.
Thank you. I have some other question for each of you, but we are a bit short of time, and I would think in something that we haven't talked about, which is mobilizing money. In the end, we need to mobilize finance, to support all these great ideas, and research and work with policymakers and create capabilities. We need money. Yeah, Jimy was mentioning before what has been done in Chile as an example in terms to help, mobilizing in money. So this is a bit of an open question to all of you in terms of green finance. And very shortly, like in a minute, each of you perhaps, what could be done in terms of green finance, to mobilize finance towards this energy transition, and or what is a problem, a barrier that you see in this? Perhaps, I don't know, Matías, you can start. Short answer, 1 minute.
I think from our experience, a key element is like, for example, like when you do all these planning studies are centralized planning expansion models, and usually they do not consider like this is going to happen in a market with rules and etc. And sometimes you cannot achieve that transition because the market is not aligned to provide the proper signals. And without the proper signals, there is no way like you are going to have investments, and
so you need regulation. You need regulation to align
exactly. Because, for example, even usually even in Chile, for example, you have the PLP process, the expansion planning. Yes, that provides some signals, but at the end of the day, if you don't have a set of rules, and you don't put prices on the attributes like the system really needs, it's really hard to create to foster that investment. Another from our experience also is, for example, storage. In Chile, you can see a lot of investment in storage, but really we still are not ready to operate that level of storage and to put prices of that level of storage. So we need to see what really is going to happen in once those 3, 4, 5 gigawatts of storage is going to be in place. But I think it's important, like adapt the market to these needs, because without proper pricing signals and market structures, you are not going to have those investments.
Definitely. Jimy, 1 minute, sharp.
I have in the same line as Matías mentioned. I only add 2 points. I think Latin America and the Caribbean has substantial resources that is critical for the energy transition. Several countries also have comparative advantage to harness the economic and social benefits of renewable energy, wind and solar energy, for example. Thus, in some cases, only adjusting regulatory and legal framework or creating economic incentives, the country can accelerate investment in renewable energy or electromobility and other relative areas. And the second point is, finally, Latin America and the Caribbean has an important challenge to bring together the various state and non-state actors in this discussion, in order to accelerate the just energy transition. For example, there is a need to engage Minister of Finance, Planning, and the financial sector more effectively to create the necessary incentive, send the market signal to the investment in our region.
Perfect. Thank you. Alfonso, final words.
Yeah, I have to be very, very sharp. I 100% agree with Matías' intervention, and I want to add that all the system was created and designed for fossil fuels, and that is a real constraint for the development of a renewable energies market. Renewable energies are the low-cost technology right now for most of global South countries, but the barriers generated by a system created and designed for fossil fuels are the key point to the key barrier to leverage. The other aspect is the paradox of the development. No. What happened with that? The countries with better conditions to access to financement has the better conditions to access for investment in renewable energies and new technologies. And countries with lowest conditions of development has higher prices of technology, has higher prices of capital, and that is an important aspect to be considered. How to de-risk the economies in order to increase the participation of the lowest cost energy in countries that has the necessity to develop with low cost energy is a key aspect to resolve in all the global south.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for all the insight information. We have different perspectives, different case studies being presented. I know that we could be talking for another hour in different topics related to this, but those will be for following webinars. So I give the floors back to Sergio Sánchez, who will say final words for this webinar. Thank you, Alfonso, Matías, and Jimy.
Many thanks to María Teresa, Matías, Alfonso, and Jimy for this enlightening discussion. Thanks as well to everyone in the audience for your time, engagement, and questions today. Before we close, I want to make sure you know how to stay connected with the Reset Network. On your screen, you can see 3 ways to get involved. First, you can become a member. Membership is for individuals, either researchers, policymakers, practitioners. As a member, you can join working groups on energy modeling, economic analysis, and policy evaluation, and access tools, trainings, small grants, and a global peer network. Second, your organization can become a partner. Partners are organizations that collaborate with the Reset Network on research, engagement, or capacity building. And third, you can help fund this network. The Reset Network is actively seeking funding support to expand its activities across the Global South. You can everything at the website of the Reset Network, www.reset-network.org. You can also email info@resetnetwork.org, following us on LinkedIn, and subscribe to our newsletter. A recording of today's event will be available on the Reset Network website. Thank you all for joining us today. The energy transition in the Global South will succeed when it is led by local researchers and decision makers, supported by the right tools, evidence, and international cooperation. That is exactly what the Reset Network is here to do. Let's build this together. Thank you.